Hello and welcome to the Paxmundi Show. I'm your host Nigel, and I'm going to try and shed some light on the new dark age of the war on terror, and to deconstruct some of the myths and misinformations about the global war of terror. Breaking news from the global war on terror this week. US Special Forces have been removed from Maidan Wardak in Afghanistan. Afghan President Karzai recently ordered the removal of US Special Forces from Wardak province in Afghanistan. Afghan officials state that they have received complaints that US forces arrested 9 civilians who have not been seen alive since. One woman, Bibi Shireen, described how her son was taken away and later found dead. She stated, "My son was taken and his body was dropped underneath a bridge in the river. One of his fingers was cut off. He was beaten very badly. His body was swollen from torture and his throat was slit." Further news on that front. On Tuesday, hundreds of Afghans protested against the US troops in Wardak province. Deputy head of Wardak province, Harat Mohammed Janan, stated, "The people have gathered here and want to know about the 9 villagers who have disappeared. Their families are concerned about them, and the protest will not stop until the fate of these missing people is cleared." Further news from Afghanistan. NATO withdraws claims about Taliban attacks. NATO forces have withdrawn their earlier claims that Taliban attacks had declined last year. NATO had previously posted a figure on their website that Taliban attacks had decreased by 7% in 2012. This has subsequently been removed following an inquiry which was received from Associated Press. On the US domestic front, Senator Paul Rand has announced that he will delay indefinitely the confirmation vote in the US Senate for Obama's nominated CIA chief, John Brennan, until Brennan or Obama can confirm that the US government's assassination program will not target US citizens on US territory. Senator Paul Rand stated, "We're talking about someone sitting in a cafe in Boston or New York, and a Hellfire missile comes raining in on them. There should be an easy answer from the administration on this. They should say, absolutely no, we will not kill Americans in America without an accusation and a trial and a jury." US Supreme Court rejects a challenge to the warrantless surveillance program. The Supreme Court noted that a group of journalists and human rights lawyers cannot challenge the US government's warrantless clandestine surveillance program, which was brought in by former President Bush, but continues under the Obama administration. On the issue of the secret drone assassination program, the Obama administration continues to refuse US Senate requests for Justice Department memos containing the legal rationale for the secret assassination program. The Washington Post reports this week that the White House has continued to withhold memos from lawmakers, citing executive privilege and attorney-client privilege. Further, the Senate Intelligence Committee has delayed their vote on John Brennan's CIA chief nomination because they are still waiting for more information from the US government about the drone program. Tonight's main discussion is going to be about that drone program, the targeted assassination by drones. I'm going to review a report called Living Under Drones, Death, Injury and Trauma to Civilians from US Drone Practices in Pakistan. And this has been produced jointly by the International Human Rights and Conflict Resolution Clinic from the Stanford Law Center and the Global Justice Clinic from the New York University School of Law. Just a little about the authors of the report. The Stanford International Human Rights and Conflict Resolution Clinic addresses a range of situations of rights abuse and violent conflict around the world by providing direct representation to victims by working with communities that have suffered or face potential abuse. The Global Justice Clinic at the New York University School of Law provides high-quality professional human rights lawyering services to individual clients and non-governmental and intergovernmental organizations, partnering with groups based in the United States and abroad, or undertaking its own projects. In the United States, the dominant narrative about the US use of drones in Pakistan is one of surgically precise and an effective tool that makes the US safer by enabling targeted killing of terrorists with minimal collateral damage. This narrative is basically false. Following 9 months of intensive research, including 2 investigations in Pakistan with more than 130 interviews with the victims, witnesses and experts, and review of thousands of pages of documentation and media reporting, the report presents evidence of the damaging and counterproductive effects of the current US drone strike policies. First, while civilian casualties are rarely acknowledged by the US government, there is significant evidence that US drone strikes have injured and killed civilians. In public statements, the US government states there have been no or single-digit civilian casualties. It is often difficult to obtain data on strike casualties because of the US government efforts to shield the drone program from democratic accountability, compounded by the obstacles to independent investigation of strikes in North Waziristan. The best currently available public aggregate data on the drone strikes are provided by the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, an independent journalist organization which has reported that from June 2004 through to September 2012, available data indicates that drone strikes killed from 2,500 to 3,325 people in Pakistan, of whom 474 to 881 were civilians, including 176 children. The victims or the communities that they leave behind are included in the narrative of this report. The survivors, witnesses, and family members have provided evidence of these civilian injuries and the deaths in drone strikes. They presented detailed accounts of 3 separate strikes for which there is evidence of civilian deaths and injuries, including a March 2011 strike on a meeting of tribal elders that killed some 40 individuals. Secondly, US drone strike policies caused considerable and underaccounted harm to the daily lives of ordinary civilians beyond death and physical injury. Drones hover for 24 hours a day over communities in northwest Pakistan, striking homes, vehicles and public spaces without warning. Their presence terrorizes men, women and children, giving rise to anxiety and psychological trauma among civilian communities. Those living under drones have to face the constant worry that a deadly strike may be fired at any moment, and the knowledge that they are powerless to protect themselves. These fears have affected behavior. The US practice of striking one area multiple times and the evidence that it has killed rescuers on many occasions makes both community members and humanitarian aid workers afraid or unwilling to go to assist injured victims of a drone strike. Some community members now avoid going to meetings or social events with other members of the community. Some parents choose to keep their children at home for fear that their children will be injured or traumatized by strikes. These strikes have even undermined cultural and religious practices related to burial, and family members are afraid to attend funerals, likewise weddings and celebrations about childbirth. This is just one example of how the drone strikes, the presence of the drones, is affecting the psyche of people in Pakistan. Drone strikes have also soured many Pakistanis on their opinion of the US military activity, their support for US military activity in their country against terrorist groups. Whilst many people were supportive of, initially supportive of US activity against some terrorist groups, that support has decreased as the civilian casualties have mounted. The current US targeted killings and drone strike practices undermine respect for the rule of law and the international legal protections, and they are setting dangerous precedents for military activity in the future. What we call the rule of law though I'm sure that's always been questionable, because it's been a rule of law that's acted on behalf of the powerful. But that in itself, UN law and charters have been really cast aside by this war from afar and targeted assassination in other countries. In the light of these concerns, the report recommends that the US conduct a fundamental re-evaluation of their current targeted killing practices, taking into account all the available evidence, the concerns of various stakeholders, and the long and short-term costs and benefits. The US should fulfill its international obligations with respect to accountability and transparency, and ensure democratic debate about key policies. They should release the US Department of Justice memos that I earlier explained that have been demanded by the US Senate. These memos outline the legal advice which was given to the government for US targeted killings in Pakistan. The US government should make public critical information concerning US drone strike policies, including the targeting criteria for so-called signature strikes, the mechanisms which are in place to ensure that targeting complies with international law, to state which laws are being applied, the nature of their investigations into civilian death and injury, and the mechanisms that they have in place to track, analyse and publicly recognise civilian casualties. Further, they should ensure independent investigation into drone strike deaths consistent with the call made by Ben Emerson, UN Special Reporter on Promotion and Protection of Human Rights and Fundamental Freedoms while countering terrorism in August 2012. That the US should fulfill its international humanitarian and human rights law obligations with respect to the use of force. This includes by not using force, lethal force, against individuals who are not members of armed groups with whom the US is in an armed conflict, or otherwise against individuals not posing an imminent threat to life. And further, that this includes not double striking targets as first responders arrive to provide aid to the victims of the initial strikes. Journalists and the media outlets should cease the common practice of referring simply to militant deaths without further explanation. All reporting of government accounts of militant deaths should include acknowledgement that the US government counts all adult males killed by drone strikes as militants. This effectively exonerates them from providing or carrying out any further investigation into those deaths. Anyone who is killed in the attack is effectively counted as a terrorist. The methodology of the report was that it is based on over 130 detailed interviews with the victims and the witnesses of the drone activity, their family members, current and former Pakistani government officials, the representatives from 5 major Pakistani political parties, and other experts, lawyers, medical professionals, and humanitarian workers. The research team conducted 2 separate investigations in Pakistan, including in Islamabad, Peshawar, Lahore, Rawalpindi. They also carried out investigations into the number of victims from North Waziristan in what is called the federally administrated territories, or FATA. These are states, about 6 provinces on the border with Afghanistan, on the Pakistani border with Afghanistan, including North and South Waziristan, where most of the targets have been. Historically, these territories were not directly administered by Pakistani officials, but were rather administered by local tribal councils and local officials who would liaise between the tribes and the Pakistani government in Islamabad. All of these provinces on the border with Afghanistan are Pashtun-speaking communities, and as such, their culture and the tribal law is based on the Pashtun Walid, the Pashtun Code of Honor, just the same as their brethren in Afghanistan, the Pashtun community there. They operate under this Pashtun Walid code, at the heart of which is the concept of honor and also of protecting not only their families but their guests. And this idea of a guest is extended. So that gives you an idea, of the political setup in these federally administrated territories in Waziristan and these other Pashtun provinces. They are or were for hundreds of years since even while the British were in power there, they were provided with this autonomy and the right to govern themselves. And this has, since the War on Terror, since 2001, this has been eroded by not only the Pakistani government forces moving into these provinces to take the war to military groups who have found a haven in those territories, the Taliban and other groups, but also now by this ominous US drone presence, where everybody's personal security is at risk 24 hours a day from the ever-present threat of drone attacks. Okay, we're just going to take a short break now and be back with you shortly. Okay, continuing. The US government had been using armed unmanned aerial vehicles or drones to carry out hundreds of covert missile strikes in northwest Pakistan since at least June 2004. Drone strikes now form a key part of the US government's approach to counter-terrorism and enable the US to kill from afar without immediate risk to American lives. For years, the government would neither confirm nor deny the existence of the strikes and only began to outline the practices and legal justifications following significant pressure from domestic and international civil society. To date, the government has refused to provide necessary details on how the program works, how targets are chosen, or how legality and accountability are ensured. Leading civil society groups repeatedly request this information, as indeed the US Senate is still waiting for this very information. It is only very recently that Obama has actually made admissions to the use of drones. Obama acknowledged in August 2012 that the US was using drones to target suspected terrorists in northern Pakistan in an online video chat. More recently, his top counter-terrorism advisor, John Brennan, and currently nominated CIA chief, discussed drone attacks as well as counter-terrorism policies in Pakistan in a speech. Virtually all of the alleged targets, are claimed to be linked to Al-Qaeda, an associated force, and alleged to pose a threat to US national security. It is only recently that anonymous government officials have revealed that for the purpose of tracking civilian casualties, the government presumes that all military-age males killed in drone strikes are combatants. The technical precision of these weapons, the Hellfire missiles, which are carried on the Predator and Reaper drones, has been disputed. And the technology used to record the surveillance and then to make the decisions as well that are made on the ground about military intervention is disputed. There is this technical term called latency. This is the delay between the monitoring of movement on the ground and the arrival of the video image to the drone pilot via a satellite link. As it was reported in July last year in the New York Times that senior operatives with Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula had told a Yemeni reporter that if they hear an American drone overhead, they all start moving around as much as possible and very quickly in order to confuse the drone. Even when the drone attacks are precise, the casualties and damage are not necessarily confined to the specific individual or vehicle which is targeted. The blast radius from a Hellfire missile can extend anywhere from 15 to 20 meters, and the shrapnel from these blasts will be projected some distance from the blast itself. It was in the aftermath of the September 11th attacks that the Bush administration began their campaign of targeted killing. The CIA allegedly carried out its first targeted drone killing in February 2002 in Afghanistan. Now, there are these two programs. There's the military program, so there is the military targets that are being okayed by Obama, with a list drawn up from military intelligence, and then you have the CIA drone program in these areas, which is operated completely separately and from different lists based often on different intelligence. And so this is another confusing matter and is making it more difficult to obtain any information on this program, particularly the CIA operated program. The drone assassination programs have been operated as well as in northern Pakistan, in Afghanistan, in Yemen, and in Somalia. Indeed, in Yemen, it was actually used against US citizens. A US born Muslim cleric who had even previously been an advisor to the US military, Anwar al-Awlaki, on how they should actually be dealing with Muslim fundamentalism. He was actually targeted and killed in an assassination, and then less than 3 weeks later, his son, Abdullah al-Awlaki, a 16-year-old youth, another American citizen, was assassinated as well. So I've tried to talk about the way in which the drones are targeted. And you've got two very distinctive methods of targeting the drones. The first are called personality strikes, and the other one is called signature strikes. So the personality strikes are much clearer. They're generally based on lists of individuals who have been, for whatever reason, considered to be a threat to US interests. And so these individuals who may not be aware of this and may not actually be active in engaged in any activity that is actually acting against US interests, or indeed in any military or subversive activity. But these individuals are followed, their movements are monitored, and when intelligence is received either via information or surveillance that this person is in a particular location and they may be meeting other people, then they will carry out a strike. And so that's the basis for personality strikes. So often they may get the person that they went after, and for them that will be considered to be, a successful mission, but they will also get anybody else who is in the vicinity. And in the area of Waziristan and other Afghanistan, other areas, people tend to live in large family compounds, and so they will all be living together in a compound, in a house, and you will have the meeting rooms where males might meet together for social or business purposes, and then adjacent to them you will have the areas where women and children will be occupying. And so the personality strikes are based on more information. They are clearly more targeted, but they will also often involve a lot of collateral damage, death and injury to civilians. Now, the other type of strike, the signature strikes, these are the ones which are even more worrying, and this is why one of the things that is being asked for is what is the criteria that the government intelligence services are using to make their decisions about signature strikes. So signature strikes are based on the monitored movement of people on the ground by the drones, and when they will have criteria which we don't know, that when people behave in a certain manner and come together in large groups of 20 or more, and this is being monitored by the drones, then the drone pilot several thousand miles away, who comes from a completely different culture, will make a decision about the activity that those people on the ground are engaging in, and they will make the decision to fire the missiles at them, whether they're outside or in a building or whatever, to carry out the targeted assassination on the grounds that these people are involved in terrorist activity. So it has become clear that these decisions are made on the basis of when people are getting together. So their presumption is that is a meeting of the Taliban, and they are getting together to plan some kind of military activity. However, in the real world, people come together for lots of reasons. And in Pashtun society, in areas like Waziristan, these are very lowly populated, mountainous, rural areas, and so people will travel for social or business meetings a long distance, and when they come together, there will often be a lot of people there for weddings, for funerals, for the celebration of the birth of a child, or for some other kind of business purposes or political purposes. People will meet together. And the danger is then that these drone pilots observing this activity will perceive that this is a terrorist activity. Now, a key feature of Obama administration's use of drones has been that they've actually increased the number of signature strikes. So these are becoming more common. The strikes are less based on information and more based on this perception of the monitoring of people's activities. So who makes the call? Who decides, who will actually be targeted? On June 15th, 2012, the Obama administration, in a letter to Congress, publicly acknowledged the existence of military actions in Yemen and Somalia against individuals that they allege to be linked to Al-Qaeda. However, the administration has not provided similar statements about CIA activities in Pakistan and Yemen. So as a result, there is little public information about these activities. Now, I'm going to move on now because, I'm actually running out of time. I'm getting towards the end of the talk. So I want to talk really about the effect that this is having on people. Look at the trauma that these kind of drone attacks are actually having on the victims and on the population in general. So in Waziristan, one has these drones in the air 24/7. They can be heard in the sky, and as a result, these are causing a massive trauma in the population. Children are traumatized. I actually witnessed a short documentary of, and I'm not sure where that was, but I think it was in Pakistan, where when these drones went over, the children actually went into a trauma. They clenched up their fists and became clenched, and they were clearly suffering some kind of physical disability, mental trauma, due to the very presence of these drones in the sky and the fear that at any time one can be a victim from this death from the sky, silent death from the sky at any minute. I'm going to just try and give you a flavour of some of the incidents that have occurred, some of the monitored drone attacks. Now, on March 17th, 2011, the US fired 2 missiles from a drone into a large gathering near a bus depot in the town of Datta Kel, North Waziristan. And to this day, the US government insists that everybody who was killed in that were insurgents. You know, they were terrorists, and therefore they were, you know, they were combatants. Now, the report investigated this, and there's so much evidence on the reality behind this meeting in the bus depot, which was, it was actually an official Jirga meeting about a business dispute, and it involved government, Pakistani government liaison officers, local tribes leaders, what they call elders, the elders of the tribe. All these people had been brought together. There was some 40 individuals who'd gathered in the Datta Kel town centre. They were all important community figures, local elders, and they came there to attend this jirga. This is the tribal council whereby they make legal decisions. It's like a court, but more of a mediation court. And so they were actually meeting to settle a dispute about a nearby chromite mine. This was an industrial dispute. And so these people were sat in the bus depot. They were sat in 2 groups of, which were about 12 meters apart, and they were carrying out this discussion between the 2 groups, with mediators going to and from the 2 circles to try to negotiate a settlement. And as this meeting was going on, suddenly one missile hit them, and one of the circles, and then another, that was followed by another missile, which killed all of the, most of the people in both of these circles. Indeed, one of the issues that was so disturbing to the families who later came to pick up their bodies of their relatives for burial was that the bodies had been so destroyed. They were just in little pieces, and they were just trying to identify, you know, the right bits attached to the right pieces of clothing of their relatives. But in all, these missiles killed a total of 42 people, and there were another 30 or so injured who had been further away from the actual discussions. And all of these people were very clearly, it's clearly documented that, you know, these were not combatants. These were, you know, respectable, established people, even government officials. And this was one of these targeted signature attacks. So there you've got a flavour of what is happening. I know we're coming towards the end of the show. I've got so much more to talk about. As you've heard, US politicians are and civilians are asking, people are asking for more information about this. Now, in the UK, we also have our own drones, which are currently operated from a base in Arizona. There are RAF operatives there. You will see there's a current RAF recruitment video, which is actually showing an operative there targeting alleged terrorists on the ground. They are planning to build a drone base in North Wales. We need to know what's happening in the UK. How many drones do we have operating? Where are they operating? What are they doing? So I would urge you, to look into this, talk about it. It isn't just in the US, it is here in the UK. And, we need to talk about this. We've got to stop this targeted assassination, extrajudiciary assassination, and drone killing, death from the sky. So I'm going to leave you with that and look forward to speaking to you again next week on the Paxmundi Show.
Things are a bit weird. Things are a bit strange out there in the world right now. So tune in. Dark City Radio.